Jurors are present.
Please be seated. Mr. Stone, you may continue.
Thank you. So, you knew that it was important to explain to Detective Hernandez your reasoning why you felt you needed to shoot Mr. Zimmerman, correct?
Correct.
And these prior events and other things that you knew about Mr. Zimmerman, all the things that Mr. Raffay asked you about on direct examination when he was asking you questions, you consider those to be very important in your thought process with regard to your actions, your shooting at Mr. Zimmerman, correct?
Correct.
But when you get and when you gave your interview with the police, you wanted to tell them everything, correct?
Correct.
When you spoke with Detective Hernandez, you told her about the September 9th incident, correct? 2014?
Correct.
You told her about the September 11th, 2014 incident, correct?
Yes.
You never said anything to her when you wanted to explain to her, when you told her about those two other incidents, why things that you were thinking about that felt made you justified in shooting at Mr. Zimmerman. You never told her about anything concerning the Trayvon Martin trial, correct?
Correct.
But yet you knew that was an important thing in your thought process.
I knew what was most important was to explain to her what was going on with me and Mr. Zimmerman.
Right. But you wanted to make sure that she understood why you shot at George Zimmerman. So
Yes.
You didn't tell her about your concerns or your thoughts about Mr. Zimmerman because of the Trayvon Martin trial, correct? You didn't
Correct.
tell her that? Correct?
That's correct.
You mentioned an incident involving Mr. Zimmerman's girlfriend on direct examination, correct?
That's true.
When Mr. Lefebvre was asking. And that was something also that you told us when Mr. Lefebvre was asking you questions. That was an important factor in your thought process, correct?
Correct.
And that would have been something important to let the police know in order to explain to them why you shot at Mr. Zimmerman, correct?
Correct.
But as important as that was, you didn't say anything to Detective Hernandez about that during your interview, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Lefebvre also asked you about an interview that you said the FBI did with you concerning Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
And that's something that you told the jury earlier was an important part of your thought process. If the FBI is asking you about George Zimmerman, there must be something up with Mr. Zimmerman. So that concerned you, correct?
It heightened my fear of him, yeah.
So once again, that was an important factor in your thought process with respect to your actions on May 11, 2015, correct?
Yes.
But yet, as important as that was, you said nothing to Detective Hernandez about that during your interview, correct?
Correct.
Now, acknowledge, you freely admit that you shot that .357 Magnum, one bullet, into George Zimmerman's truck, correct?
Yes, sir.
And those images, those post office video images, the still photographs of the video, that does depict you and Mr. Zimmerman, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you shot into Mr. Zimmerman's truck, you intended to kill him, correct?
I intended to stop the threat.
Well, killing him is stopping the threat, correct?
It could be.
So your intent was to kill Mr. Zimmerman, correct?
My intent was to stop the threat.
And when you fired that shot into that front passenger window, that window was completely rolled up, was completely shut, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you couldn't see through that window, correct?
Oh, I could see through it.
You could see
I
through
could definitely-
that window, you could see through it.
Passenger window. Yes.
Okay, move on to your next question.
You heard the testimony of Captain Biles, correct?
I did.
And you heard that that window was 3%, correct?
I did.
You know what 3% means?
It was explained in here, yes.
And you, so you're telling this jury you could see through that window?
Positively.
Was that the window that you saw him aim the gun at you?
It was. Yes.
Not the back window, not the rear window.
No. The side passenger window.
You heard the testimony of Officer Call. Your testimony is you can see through that passenger window. You heard the testimony of Officer Call, correct?
I did.
And your testimony is different than his testimony, correct? With respect to whether you can see through that window.
My testimony is my testimony.
That's not my question, Mr. Apperson.
Objection, Your Honor. This is known as a boat right violation.
Can we approach? It's not boat right. May we approach, Your Honor?
Once again, yes, but this is it.
So your testimony is, well, let me ask you this before I ask that question. What about the rear passenger window?
As
Did
I
you
was,
see through that window?
the cabin itself was illuminated. As to whether I could see through that window, I wasn't really looking through that.
Which window are you talking about? The rear passenger window? You said that window. I want to make sure we're talking about the right, same window.
I was able to see in the cabin of the truck. I wasn't trying to look through that window,
When you say that, what?
the rear passenger window,
The rear passenger window?
but I believe I could.
But just so we're clear, your testimony to this jury is that you saw through that front passenger window, and that's when you saw him pointing a gun at you.
Objection,
Correct.
asked and answered, repetitive.
What about the front driver's window? Driver's side window, see through that?
As far as I understand, that was down. That window was down. That window was also letting light in, aside from what was coming in from the windshield.
Now, you heard the testimony of Officer Call, correct?
It's true.
And you heard his testimony is that you couldn't see through those windows, correct?
Correct.
So your testimony is different than his testimony.
Certainly, in my experience, is different than his experience. I saw this vehicle as it was moving, and light was illuminating the cabin.
All right, now would you answer my question, please?
Certainly.
Your testimony is different than Officer Call's testimony, correct?
Objection, asked and answered.
Didn't answer.
Well, he did answer it, and then he explained further. Go ahead and answer it one more time.
Your testimony is different than Officer Call's testimony, correct?
Certainly.
And you also heard the testimony of Detective Hernandez about whether you could see through the passenger side windows, correct?
I did.
You heard her testimony. Your testimony is different than her testimony, correct?
Certainly.
You heard the testimony of Ed Bigley, correct? He was the Winter Park evidence technician, correct?
This is true. Yep.
You heard his testimony that you couldn't see through that passenger window, correct?
Correct.
Your testimony is different than his testimony, correct?
Correct.
You always keep that 350 7 right by your side?
Most of the time.
And you told and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Apperson, I want to make sure that I heard you right. When Mr. LeBay was asking you questions, did you not tell him that you picked up your gun before you saw George Zimmerman with the gun, correct?
Correct.
So at the time that you picked up your gun, there was no deadly threat.
There had just been one made. He'd said, "I'm going to kill you." Just prior.
Now, would you please answer my question? At the time you picked up your gun, you didn't see him with the gun in his hand, correct? That's what you told us, right?
Correct.
So at that moment, there was no imminent threat of deadly force against you, correct?
Not when I first touched my gun.
pick your gun. Didn't you say that? You picked up your gun, correct?
Yes.
When you picked up your gun, there was no imminent threat of deadly force or great bodily harm against you, correct?
Correct.
And you told us a few moments ago that post office video does depict you and Mr. Zimmerman, correct?
Yes.
So you're behind Mr. Zimmerman, correct?
In that picture from the video, it looks to be we're pretty neck to neck, almost neck to neck.
Neck and neck? No, I'm talking about before you make, I'm talking about going eastbound on Lake Mary Boulevard.
Yes.
Before the U-turn.
Yes.
You were behind him,
Yes.
right? And then when you made the U-turn, when you and him made the U-turn, you were behind him, correct?
Yes.
And that's when you called him a fat motherfucker?
Yes.
So you were pretty upset at Mr. Zimmerman then, correct?
I was upset.
You were really upset to call him that, right?
I was pretty upset.
And then Mr. Zimmerman makes his U-turn, and then you make his U-turn. You follow him, correct?
Correct.
You followed him, right?
I got into the left-hand lane as he did.
You didn't have to make the U-turn, right?
Didn't have to.
But you did.
I was committed to the turn.
What do you mean committed? You could have waited there. It might have been a traffic infraction, but you could have waited there until the eastbound traffic cleared and then got back on Lake Mary Boulevard and headed eastbound, correct?
Correct. I still wanted to get my cigarettes.
Well, let's talk about that. What 7-Eleven did you want to get your cigarettes at?
The closest one. I was crunched for time. That would have been Reinhardt Road, Lake Mary Boulevard.
If you kept on going straight on Lake Mary Boulevard eastbound, you would have, instead of waiting for traffic to clear at the U-turn, you would have been at the 7-Eleven by the railroad tracks in a minute and a half, correct?
It's 2 to 3 times further. I was crunched for time. I didn't have that time. I needed to get to the closest store. The closest store was 7-Eleven on Reinhardt and Lake Mary Boulevard.
So, your intent was to go, that's what you're telling the jury right now, your intent was to go to the 7-Eleven on Reinhardt Road, right? That's what you're telling us.
Right.
Did you listen to, when we played your video statement, Lake Mary Police Department, did you hear that?
I did.
You told her that your intent was to go to the 7-Eleven by the railroad tracks. Didn't you tell her that?
I think I heard that, yes.
Well, which one is it, Mr. Apperson? Why don't you just pick one and let the jury, tell the jury, which one is it?
It's the closest one. It's the one on Reinhardt Road.
So now you're changing the testimony from what you told me?
I was anxious during that interview, and I think when I said the one on Country Club, I was meaning the one on Reinhardt Road. It was obviously the closest one. There's no reason I would go 3 times further down the road to a 7-Eleven when I've got one right there.
So when you say Country Club, you mean Reinhardt?
Exactly.
Now, this encounter with Mr. Zimmerman, you were going westbound on Lake Mary Boulevard towards Reinhardt Road, right?
Correct.
Correct? Well, you remember, did you look at you watched your interview as it was playing, correct? Right?
This is true.
And why don't you tell the jury what direction you told Detective Hernandez you were going when you had the encounter with Mr. Apperson? Why don't you tell the jury right now, what did you tell her? What direction?
I believe I told her I was going eastbound incorrectly, and she corrected me and said, no, that actually is towards I-4, that would be westbound. And I said, oh, okay, you're
No.
right.
That's not true. You actually corrected her. When that
I'm going
interview...
to object to the form of this question. No, that's not true. It's simply not a question.
Please rephrase your
Yes,
question.
Your Honor. When she said to you that you were going westbound, do you remember what your response was?
No.
Wasn't your, well, it's on the video. Let me see if you refresh it. I'll ask you a question. Do you remember what you said at that point? Remember you said that?
Could you repeat the question?
When she said you were going westbound, then you corrected her and said at that point. Correct?
Correct.
And then with your hand gestures, you indicated you want to go to westbound, and then you said make the U-turn with your gesturing with your hands, and then instead of making a right into Waymart, your hand kept on going this way, eastbound. Correct?
Correct.
And then it was at that point you said you had the encounter with Mr. Zimmerman, right?
Correct.
So you want to correct your testimony now?
No.
You-
In that interview and on that video, I got confused between eastbound and westbound on West Lake Mary Boulevard. I just had a gun pointed at me. I just shot at somebody, and my directions weren't necessarily on cue. I was a little bit messed up in my direction.
So you were so confused. You confused eastbound from westbound and North Country Club Road and Reinhardt. Correct?
Certainly.
Yes, you may.
Excuse me, Your Honor. May I approach the clerk?
Yes, you may.
I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Any redirect?
I do have Mr. Apperson, let's go. I'm going to take things in order as you were questioning just now. So your first questions were asked about your interview with Detective Hernandez. Did you think in that short interview, did you think it would be important to convey to Detective Hernandez that Mr. Zimmerman had been arrested, I beg your pardon, that he had shot and killed Trayvon Martin. Did you think that it would be important to tell her that?
I thought that was kind of the obvious at that point. I thought she knew she had known about that. I thought,
You thought she and perhaps every other human being in, well, the United States had heard about that?
yes,
Did, you were also asked, well, you know, why didn't you bring up this FBI interview? You speak to the police there at Waymont at court, as you told us that you did,
yeah,
correct?
yes.
Did you happen to mention that to them?
I don't recall. I could have. I don't recall.
Thank you. Were in the interview, you were asked, you know, what happened that day on May the 11th. Were you ever asked questions, why are you afraid of George Zimmerman? What past acts of violence do you know about him? Were you ever asked anything like that?
Not at all.
Did I want to ask you too. You told Mr. Stone that, you know, when you were being questioned, things came out all at once. Sort of in a rush. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes,
Do you recall saying during that interview that Mr. Zimmerman reached out a gun at, quote, reached out a gun at me and threatened to kill me?
yes,
When you said that, were you speaking about the very events that happened on May the 11th?
yes.
Did those things happen?
They did.
Did they happen all at once, or did they happen basically a minute apart?
Yeah, they happened approximately a minute apart. They didn't happen all at once.
You were asked questions about the window tint, and if your testimony about being able to see in that car was different than other witnesses here, and you said, well, your testimony is your testimony, and your experience is different from theirs.
Yes,
False.
yes,
The questioning started with Officer Call. But with Officer Call, there, Mr. Zimmerman's truck, I'll ask the obvious, Mr. Zimmerman didn't have a big sunscreen blocking all the light in his car when he was going down Lake Mary Boulevard, did he?
no, he didn't.
And Your Honor, for the record, I states 5, just public. You don't know the angle of the sun, or indeed if there was any sun when those witnesses were looking at the car, do you?
Yeah, I have no clue as to that.
No, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any recross?
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this would be a perfect time for us to break for lunch because it's 10 to noon. So if you'll start coming back at 1:20 downstairs in the jury lounge, we'll get started. as soon as we have you back together. Once again, you're going to have to listen to my instructions. So during the lunch hour, please do not read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. Do not use any type of an electronic device to go on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. Do not read or create any emails, text messages, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. If you're around somebody and they're talking about the case, please ask them to stop. Tell them that you are on the jury. If they insist, please leave them at once and report the matter to a court deputy. And also, please do not drive by any of the places described in the evidence for the purpose of doing an independent investigation. Do I have your assurances that you will abide by these instructions? Okay, I'm getting a yes from everybody. Thank you very much. If you'll please put your notepads face down, follow Deputy Dennis. Enjoy your lunch. Apperson, watch your step. You can go ahead and take a seat with counsel. Do we know if Mr. Zimmerman's out there? I told him to be back here at 11. What time do you want him back here, Mr. LaFay?
I think under the circumstances, he might, right when we're done with our lunch break, Your Honor.
At 1:30?
Ma'am, he's not entered the building at this time.
He's not in the building?
No, there's not living.
Well, somebody needs to let him know to be here at 1:30. He was ordered to be here at 11 o'clock. He had not come into the building at all, even at 11?
We have not heard any announcements.
Well, if he's not here at 1:30, I'm going to issue an order to show cause.
Your Honor, and let me say this in all fairness. I spoke with
Okay.
Ms. Horn, who's an attorney, and she represents one of my witnesses, Samantha Scheibe. So I said, you know, I was pushing things forward.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to do this during the, since Mr. Zimmerman has had counsel with him throughout this, Mr. West, if you would please give a call to Mr. West during the break and ask him to have Mr. Zimmerman here at 1:30.
Well, and just in 10 words, Ms. Horn said, well, do you want Mr. Zimmerman at 1:32? And I said, no, the judge ordered him here at 11, so that's taken care of.
Okay, well, if you'll please let Mr. West
I will do.
and/or Ms. Horn know that I want him here at 1:30. Okay, with that, is there anything else that we need to take up before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
Okay,
1:30?
1:30. Court is in recess.